Hey writers, you're listening to the Kobo ReWriting Life podcast, where we highlight an episode from our backlist that will bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. I'm your host, Tara Kremen, Director of Kobo Writing Life. Today's episode is an interview from July 2022 with Samantha M. Bailey. The reason that I've picked this episode is because Samantha's book has been shortlisted for Canada Reads, which takes place next week. And if you don't know what Canada Reads is, it has been described as a literary survivor with celebrities championing books. So each day, panelists vote to eliminate one book until a single title is chosen as the title that the whole country should read this year. The celebrity that is championing Samantha's book is Olympic gold medal swimmer Maggie McNeil. And something that's interesting too is that Samantha's book is the first thriller that's ever been featured on Canada Reads. Maggie has said, "You don't have to read a book to learn something. You can read something because you simply enjoy it." As someone who picked up reading more vigorously later in life, hopefully this book will encourage others if they haven't started that journey for themselves. We'd like to wish Samantha the best of luck in Canada Reads, and we hope that you, listeners, enjoy this interview about how she wrote the book that was shortlisted.
On today's episode, we are chatting to Samantha M. Bailey, who is the USA Today and #1 nationally best-selling author of Woman on the Edge, which is sold in 11 countries to date. She's also a journalist and freelance editor, and she chatted to us about her second novel, Watch Out for Her.
We had such a great conversation with Samantha talking about her writing process in creating Watch Out for Her. She wrote most of the book during the pandemic, so we talked a lot about how that affected her writing. We talked about how she inhabited the paranoid headspace with her characters. And we chatted about how she moved from writing dark rom-coms into psychological thrillers, which is really interesting. Samantha also told us about her writing community and how important it is to her and how she found this community. And she also talked to us about how she keeps in touch with her readers. So it was a great conversation. We covered a lot, and we really hope you enjoy.
We are excited to welcome Samantha Bailey to the podcast today. She's talking to us about her new book, Watch Out for Her. Thank you so much for coming, Samantha.
Thanks for having me.
Can you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and about your books?
Sure. So I was born and raised in Toronto, and I still live here now. And I have a Bachelor of Education from McGill University. And I have a Master's of Education in Applied Linguistics from University of Toronto. And while I wanted to be a writer for my whole life, I was also a freelance manuscript editor for a long time with my own business on hiatus now. I am a voracious reader, and Watch Out for Her is my second traditionally published novel. And it is the sixth book, though, that I've written. And Watch Out for Her is, you can call it domestic suspense, you can call it psychological thriller. I would say it's probably both. And it is the story of a mother named Sarah Goldman, who is a middle-aged mother who has a 6, almost 7-year-old son, and has been a stay-at-home mother for his entire life. And she wants to find a piece of herself again. She wants to find her own identity, and she wants to return to her first love, which is photography. And so she hires a babysitter for the summer named Holly Monroe, a 22-year-old med student. And Holly and Jacob, Sarah's son, adore each other. And Sarah and Holly create a very special bond between them as well, until Sarah sees something that she can't unsee. And she feels that she needs to escape from Holly. And so they leave from Vancouver to Toronto. She goes with her family to Toronto to a new home, only to find hidden cameras in this new home when they arrive. And she has to wonder if perhaps she hasn't left Holly so far behind after all.
So before we get into the nitty and gritty of the book and writing the book, which was a lot of fun to read, I want to talk a little more about your journey to publishing. You said this is the 6th book you've written. So how did you go from studying linguistics and education to writing 4 books, 2 of which have now been published?
We'll try to do this in a nutshell. I've been writing since I was 10 years old. I submitted my first manuscript to publishers when I was 10. And I was rejected for the first time when I was 10. And then I wanted to write, and I wrote my teenage years, and I wrote. At 29, I decided I was going to attempt a full-length novel. It was an edgy rom-com. I used to write edgy rom-coms. And I signed with an agent in New York City very quickly. And I thought all my dreams would come true. I thought this was it. I thought I was that overnight success story. And I thought, I was going to be in New York City, and I was going to be drinking my Cosmos at my book signings. And I was basically Carrie Bradshaw. That's who I thought I was going to be. And we went on submission with that first book, and it was resoundingly rejected. So I wrote another edgy rom-com, and it too was resoundingly rejected. And at that time, my agents and that agent and I amicably parted ways, and I kept writing. So I wrote 2 more books, and they increasingly became darker and darker and darker. And I wrote 2 more books. There was nothing in me. I was never going to give up. I wanted a traditional publishing deal almost more than anything in the world. I wanted a publishing partner. I wanted to see my book on shelves in the bookstore. And I just kept going. And I looked for another agent for quite a while for those books. And then I wrote Woman on the Edge, my debut. And I signed with my incredible agent. And we then actually spent 3.5 years revising it. And not 3.5 years of, 3.5 years of constant writing. There's, waiting in between. I send it to her. She sends it to me to get through it. But we wanted to get it into the best shape possible so that this time I would see my dreams come true. And I did. It sold in 11 countries. It hit number 1 on the Toronto Star and Globe and Mail bestseller lists. It became a USA Today bestseller. And it's unbelievable and surreal. And after 20 years, it will be 20 years. I'll be 49 at the end of May, from the time I started this to the time of now, with my second novel coming out. And I am the luckiest person in the whole world.
I have so many questions, starting with what was your book when you were 10 about? What was your first?
Oh my gosh. It was called Freddie the Flame. It was, I think, based on like the Mr. Men series. I think that's what I got the inspiration from. It was about, so silly. It's about this flame who, whatever he touched would blow up, would burn. And so he was lonely. This poor little flame Freddie was so lonely, and he couldn't get a job because of course he was looking for a job. I don't know how old he was. And nobody wanted to go near him because they would basically turn to ash. And he finally got a job on a train, pushing the coal into the train. I don't even know if that was a possibility. I didn't even know if trains ran on coal then. So he pushed the coal into the train, and he met his ex-flame, Frida, who also had the same special quality that Freddie had. And he lived happily ever after.
That's adorable. And they should not have rejected it.
I don't know.
So as you said, your first book, Woman on the Edge, was super successful right out of the gate, pretty much. How do you feel coming up into the release of book number 2? Does it feel like a lot of pressure, or is it just exciting to get this book out to readers?
I have all the feels. And I think any author putting out a second novel does. Any author putting out a book does. We are now putting our heart and soul into readers' hands. We've bled, we've sweat, we've cried, we've put everything we've got on that page, and now it doesn't belong to us anymore. So we all, I think, feel that. And then if you've had success with a debut, definitely there's pressure. I don't want to disappoint my readers who love my first book. I don't want to, disappoint anyone who's expecting something and it's not Woman on the Edge, because it's not Woman on the Edge. It's a totally different story. It's my voice. Absolutely. It is my writing style, but it's a completely different story. I am very, very, very proud of that book. I don't think I've ever worked so hard on anything in my life, actually, as Watch Out for Her, because I did it during the pandemic and gave up my all. I always do, but during the pandemic, it's a whole different ballgame. So I'm also really excited. I am really hopeful and full of joy. And as I said, I'm so full of gratitude. I have gotten the most amazing early reviews the most incredible support from bookstagrammers and booksellers and librarians. And I have a phenomenal publishing team behind me. I have an amazing agent, and I have the best author friends in the world who know exactly what I'm going through. So here we go.
And just to kind of touch on what you said about writing during the pandemic, Woman on the Edge came out in November 2019. So from my understanding of time, your entire watch out for her experience has kind of been under the umbrella of the pandemic. What was writing a book during 2020 like for you?
Hell, but I'll go back for 1 second to Woman on the Edge. It came out in Canada in November 2019. And so I got the launch of my dreams, and I got everything that debut authors with books out in 2020 didn't get. But it came out in the US March 3rd, 1 week before the world shut down, and everything changed. So all those dreams turned to dust for a short time, and then everybody pivoted and banded together and created a whole different world. And what was it like writing during the pandemic? I have 2 kids who now are almost 15 and almost 12, but they were 9 and 12 at that time. And the most important thing to me was to make sure that they were mentally and physically healthy and happy. I have parents who are older. So, and I was on deadline for this second book. And my kids were home and in school online. And I started getting up at 4 or 5 a.m. so that I could have space just to myself to write. I don't have an office with a door. I don't have an office at all. I work in the kitchen with a desk pressed up against the wall. And so whenever it was recess or it was lunchtime or it was after school, then of course everybody comes downstairs, and I'm shocked that on every page of Watch Out for Her, I didn't write mom, 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 mom.
Yes, I was going to say that the kitchen is a high traffic area.
Yeah. And it's the only place I can go. My husband is working from home in our bedroom. And so it is what it is. So it was very hard to be able to focus and to find the time. I had to learn to write in shorter increments. I had to learn to write in chaos. I had to really try to explain that I needed my own time, which was hard because everybody needed everybody, especially at the beginning, because no one knew what was going on. We were all so frightened. But it was also extremely cathartic and therapeutic. When I started writing Watch Out for Her, and I started writing Sarah, and I started writing Holly, I love them. I love them. People can call them likable, unlikable. I love how messy and complicated and complex and imperfect and flawed they are. And especially with Sarah, I appreciated a mother trying to find her own identity separate from motherhood, because I felt that I'd achieved that balance. I'd achieved it. My kids were finally, in school full time, and I had a career, and I had, what I thought was this just amazing, amazing balance. And then suddenly that balance was gone. And there was no separate space and time for me anymore. There was no separate sense of self. And I really started to identify with her and to connect with her on a very different level than I anticipated. And that felt really good. And it felt really good to put all my fears and my worries and my anxieties into this novel.
One of the things that Rachel and I were talking about is that there is a feeling of kind of claustrophobia and being closed in and that sort of anxiety that builds throughout the book. And now that you talk about writing it at home during a pandemic, that actually does make a lot of sense. Did that sort of contribute to the atmosphere that you were building in the book?
It's funny. I think that was almost unintentional or subconscious. It's interesting you say that. I'm so happy to hear that. And it's sometimes very hard as the writer. Reading is such a subjective experience. It belongs to you. And both of your experiences will be so different from each other's. And from my experience writing it, that maybe I did put all of that in there. And what I wanted was to create a very tense, uncomfortable feeling in the book. I wanted to entertain, and I wanted to make people think and feel, and I wanted to make it extremely, extremely tense.
And building that tension and kind of the like paranoid headspace that both Sarah and Holly exist in very different ways. How is it like inhabiting that headspace while also existing in a world that was full of paranoia for various reasons during 2020?
I don't know who said it. I think someone said that writing is torturous fun. So it was torturous fun. It was great to be able to, again, put my own paranoia and anxieties onto other people so that I didn't put them onto anybody I know in real life, so that I could do that. And of course, in the book, I mean, they're dealing with something so different, and it's paranoia and anxieties in a very different way and to a different level. I do not place cameras on other people. I am not a voyeur. I definitely people watch, but so it felt really good. But there were times where I think the lines got a little blurred, where the things that were bothering Sarah were bothering me. And I couldn't tell if it was from the book or from the situation of being isolated in a small cramped house for months on end with no ability to go anywhere to see anybody. And in the end, it allowed me, though, to completely crack my soul open and really just let it all out onto the page.
I'm always curious, what was the initial seed that was planted when you started this story? Was it like you wanted to explore the kind of the babysitter idea, or was it a particular relationship or something more general?
It was more general. Woman on the Edge was this lightning bolt moment, whereas this one was more a culmination of thoughts and discussions with my agents and my editor, and, trying to figure out, how do we follow up Woman on the Edge? And how do we do that so I'm true to myself, true to my voice, and I tell the story I want to tell? Because it has to be a story I want to tell and a story that readers want to read. I love the babysitter mother dynamic. I find that fascinating when you've hired a stranger to come into your home, or you've allowed a stranger to take care of your child. I love the idea of not being able to watch the people who watch your children. Trying to control the uncontrollable is a very difficult thing to accept, that you cannot control the uncontrollable. I love the concept of what goes on behind closed doors, the expectations that are placed on us that sometimes cause us to hide who we truly are from other people and even from ourselves, because we're so afraid to disappoint anybody. And that, I think, is what leads to anxieties and secrets and lies. And then very much the concept of motherhood, identity, all of that, guilt and worry and all of the feelings we mothers have of where is the space for us as separate people, and where is the space as, the everything for our children, who are the everything for us, but they can't be our everything because we also need something that is ours alone.
And how do you take these like big concepts and like big emotionally impactful ideas and kind of funnel them into an entertaining thriller?
It's a great question.
And how do you plot out all of the beats that let you hit the emotional mark while also, like I said, like it's really entertaining?
A really detailed outline. So I write really detailed outlines that I have to be careful not to get stifled by, but I write really detailed outlines beforehand so that I know the characters' motivations, their arcs, their backstories, the clues, the plot beats, all the elements that will drive the story forward. So I have a map before I start writing of what doesn't work and what does work, what slows the story down, what doesn't need to be there. And then I'll write a first draft, and then I'll have to rewrite the whole thing no matter what. No matter what, my first draft, I always have to rewrite. For me, the magic is in the revision, and it is in somebody else reading my work and critiquing it, because I often can't see when I've put way too much of this thought process in there and I need to chop away at it. I love when someone cuts my work. I love red lines. The more red lines, I get really excited about red lines because I know that the next draft will be so much better. It gives me something to work toward. It's a challenge. So I would say editing is a major part of that.
So you have a background in manuscript editing, you said. Were you doing fiction?
Yes, fiction. Yeah, mostly fiction. I was a grammar and writing teacher for a very long time, for over 15 years. And then when my daughter was born, she's my second child, I decided I wanted to work at home so that I could be available more. So I could, volunteer at the school all the time. I could, be on the parent council. I could be there if anybody needed me, that I could be really, really present for them while also having my own life. So I opened my own editing business about a year after she was born. And I did everything, resumes, academic essays, scripts, nonfiction. And then over time, I really narrowed it to fiction manuscripts. And I love it. I miss it. I haven't had time to be able to do it. And I love the editing process. I'm, critique for friends who critique for me. We critique each other's work. And I love it so much because it uses such a different part of my brain and I learn so much from it.
And it sounds like it helps you as an author, because I think it can go both ways. You can either feel kind of sensitive about it because you know about this kind of thing, and having someone else go into it for you, I think can be challenging, or it sounds like for you, it's, exactly how beneficial a second set of eyes is and how important it is to have someone else give you critiques that you can't always see.
Yeah, it's so true. I'm a tough editor. And I'm going to be honest, because if I'm not honest, I'm not helping you. Not mean, I will point at all of the things I love, but I will really, really focus on the things that I think need to work and give suggestions on what perhaps might improve it. I'm only one set of eyes. It's just a subjective opinion. And then I want to be nailed to the wall. My critique partner always laughs because she's, she can't believe, she said she loves editing for me or critiquing me, because she never has to worry that I'm going to be upset or I'm going to, get mad at her. I would be upset if she didn't give it all the honesty that she has, because unless she does that, I can't get better. And my whole goal is to get better and to create the very, very, very best book that I possibly can.
Yeah, you definitely sound like a dream author to work with from an editorial perspective.
Except I don't know anything about tech. So that's where I think I, drive my poor team nuts, where I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to do that. Help.
I was going to say, Joni and I both have a background in editorial. And I don't know about you, Joni, but when I was in school for it, we actually had to, it wasn't like a full class, but there was definitely a good section of a class about communicating with authors and helping them accept critique, because at the end of the day, it's your baby that you're handing to somebody else and asking to eviscerate, which the imagery of baby is probably the wrong one to go with there. But
but it's true. No, it's true.
But it's true. Do you have any advice for first-time authors who are handing over that manuscript that they've been slaving over to a stranger, and how to take in that critique without taking it too personally?
For sure. It's totally natural to feel like you've been punched in the stomach. Of course. You have put so much work into this, and it's your heart and it's your soul and it's everything. And if you're not published yet, it's also all these hopes and dreams that you want so much that you're so scared you won't be able to fulfill, because it is a very hard business and there's so much rejection sometimes that comes before the success. I think for any author who is in the process of trying to get published, know that none of this is fast. It may not be. For some people, it is very fast. I do know overnight successes. For nobody is it easy. For nobody. Nobody finds this easy. Publishing is a brutal, gut-wrenching, soul-destroying business. You need a really thick skin. You need to know that your first draft will not be your final draft. That the magic is in the rewrites and the revisions. And the first draft is generally for you just to get it all out, to get the story out, to put the words on paper. And it can be total garbage, and that's okay. Do not hand your first draft to anybody. That's a really good piece of advice. Do not send it to anyone. Do not hand it to anyone. Let it marinate. Let it sit. Walk away from it and come back to it with fresh eyes. Come back to it if you can as a reader And when you hand it over, hand it to somebody that you trust, to be honest. Hand it to somebody who perhaps understands the genre, understands your goals, understands that publishing is a business as well as an art. And if your goal is to have a sustainable career as an author, then there is a different mindset that you probably need to accept as well.
Yeah, that leads us into talking a little bit about actually selling your books. And I know that you are particularly engaged with your readers. And I wanted to ask you about that. I know that on your website, you've invited book clubs to reach out to you directly, which is so generous to talk about your book, because I don't know how many responses you get from that, but I can imagine it's a lot. Can you talk a little bit about how you engage with readers?
Well, first, the idea that anybody wants me to appear at their book club, on their podcast, these events at their bookstores, boggles my mind that anyone would line up for me to sign books for them. Is, to me, authors are rock stars. They're rock stars. Even some of my close author friends, to me, are they're my idols. So I still get all giddy when I see their emails, and they're, people who I've, gone for drinks with, and, I am so appreciative of anyone who's taken a chance on me, who's paid money to, buy my books, who spends time with my words. So I really do want to show my appreciation for that. I love people. I really love people. I'm an ambivert. So, I do like to be home in my own little space, but I do very much also love to connect with people and talk to them. The book community is really a wonderful, warm, genuine, safe space with people I truly enjoy connecting with. So it's a pleasure for me to connect with my readers and to talk about my books with them and to talk about whatever comes up. I really, really enjoy that aspect. It's not always easy because I have a lot to keep up with, and there are a lot of comments and a lot of posts and tags, and I always want to be able to respond to everybody. I can't respond immediately. And then I feel guilty that I can't respond immediately. I'm trying hard not to feel guilty, but it is something, it really means a lot to me to connect with my readers.
And how do you find the balance of, I guess, time management between having the time to write and revise and work on what you're working on now or next, as well as keeping up with readers who have read your past work?
It's a work in progress for me. It's really, I'll be totally honest. So like I said, I get up at 4 or 5 and I try to save that time for writing. I do my best writing early in the morning when everyone else is asleep and it's dark and it's quiet and it's a little eerie. So I try really hard not to look at social media. I try really hard to put my phone somewhere where I'll forget where I've put it. Yeah, I find it hard to resist social media. I find it hard to resist not responding to people. So it is something I am working on, trying to dedicate separate time. I remember I had a brief talk with JT Ellison and Lisa Unger, two absolutely incredible, hugely successful authors about this, about protecting the writing time. And they were talking about how you protect the writing time. So I do try, but it does sometimes blur together, especially as my book is coming out on Tuesday. I find I'm kind of, all over the place and trying to answer this and answer that and get, work done for my next book. And then unfortunately what will happen to me is I'll run on adrenaline, passion, and caffeine for so long that I'll feel like I've been hit by a truck, and I'll have like an afternoon where I'm just flat out on the couch watching, TikTok because I can't move.
I think Rachel will agree that that's one of the most relatable things ever. We've both done that.
I spend a lot of time on the couch on TikTok. That is true.
Oh God, it's like, it's a drug.
Oh, the time doesn't exist once you open that app. It's gone. Do you have your own TikTok account, or are you just like me and a TikTok voyeur?
I'm a TikTok voyeur. I thought about it, and I can't take on another platform. I'm really heavily active on Facebook and Instagram, and I knew if I took that on, it was over. And I'm also, it's not my comfortable space, and I think my kids would really hate me if I got an account. I just don't think I'd ever. Yeah, I think they would just really not enjoy that. So I am a voyeur. Yes.
Although, we have talked to, I think, more than one author who have utilized the youth of their kids to help them on TikTok.
Mine are not interested.
All right.
I don't think I would have done that for my mom either.
No, the look of horror that crosses their face, especially on my daughter.
So I wanted to ask you about, you mentioned the author community, and something I always wonder about, particularly with trad, because we know with indie authors, like the author community part is really, really important. But with trad, because writing is so solitary and you really are on your own journey and you're working directly with your publisher, typically, how do you find your author community in that space? Like, is it very welcoming? Like, how does it work? How do you even get in there?
It is the most beautiful group of people I've ever encountered in my whole life. It is not, people might think that there's competition and we want to one up each other. I have never, ever, ever felt that.
Because there's space for so many books. Like there's no...
1,000%. 1,000%. We all love to read and we all love to read each other's books. So first there's admiration and respect for each other's work and talent. We love each other's work and talent. And so a lot of those, friendships are based on that, just that we're in awe of each other. And we are in awe of each other. We write a lot of the same kind, same material, but when you read someone else's book, wow, how did you do that? It is just a sense of family. It is family. It is people who are helping each other to achieve the very best they can out of life, to celebrate each other, to promote each other's work, to have each other's backs, to be each other's confidants. Only a writer understands what another writer is going through. So to be able to honestly and openly talk with each other means everything. Yeah, the authors who are my community, and that would be in Canada and across the world. And in Canada, I did get to see the authors, and we have a really close-knit, tight group. In the thriller community, we email each other. We just send out a mass email when we need help promoting something, and everyone drops everything and they're on it. It is magic.
And I'm just kind of curious, how do you find one another? Like, do you just cold email the thriller authors that you admire within your sphere? How does this work? I'm so curious.
It's a really good question because it is hard. It is really intimidating to reach out to other people, especially when you admire them so much. So there are groups on Facebook and on Instagram. There are debut groups. So debut 2020, debut 2021, debut 2022. Those are the actual handles. So, and within those groups, you can find your people. You can find the ones who you connect with most. You can do that. I think online is probably right now the easiest way to do it. So those groups are fantastic. If you're an aspiring author and you're not, yet in that space, the Shit About Writing podcast, Bianca Murray, Carly Waters, and Cecilia Lyra, if I'm pronouncing Cecilia's name correctly. It is an incredible podcast that actually has a writer match, almost like speed dating for writers. And also Bianca and Carly and Cecilia have the most wonderful podcasts for all writers, not just aspiring. Any writer, no matter how much experience you have or don't have, this is one of the best podcasts that I can recommend. And I would say start there because I know that they've been very successful at matching writers together for critique partners and then as friends and, just to get people who are in your right at the same moment in your journey.
That's really great advice because I think it can probably be a little bit intimidating when you start out and you don't know where to find these people and you're sitting at home with your manuscript going, but where is everyone?
And I think, there's so much fear involved in putting yourself out there. And I was so scared. I was so scared when, when social media first started, I was really frightened to put myself out there. And then I found my, we call ourselves the Beach Babes. There are 7 of us they're all in the US. I'm the only Canadian. And every January until the last couple of years, we would spend a week at a beach house in California writing, laughing and talking. And I met them in a Facebook group. It was a Facebook group of chick lit writers, because this is way back when I used to write chick lit, edgy chick lit. And from that group, I found some of my best friends in the world.
Awesome. And one of the things that we've talked about on here before, which I really love about writing and the writing community, is that particularly for women in other industries, there's this kind of idea that, there's one space and there's one woman who's going to get that one spot for the woman at the top. And with writing, it's just not like that, because if somebody loves your books, they're going to love the other author who writes books in the same genre or whatever. Like, there are so many readers with so much appetite for books that is bigger than any author can write to fill, so that you don't have to worry about that. There's one space. There's maybe there's some competition, but there's space for everyone.
Yeah. I've never actually worked in any field with other women where I felt there was any sense of competition ever. And it's not me to even, I don't even understand it. I don't understand it. We're a sisterhood. I believe in women supporting women. I believe in I love women. I love my female friends. With my whole heart. So any sense of, that kind of competition or drama or any, I have no part in it. I don't even listen to it, pay attention to any of it. So with female authors, we're going through exactly the same thing. We write about, our books are all very different. Our plots are different. Sometimes our purpose for writing them is different. Even within the genre, there are subgenres that are so different. What we're all trying to do is write compelling women that so people want to follow their journeys. And I think that we're all compelling women, who have so much to learn from each other and to give to each other.
Coming off of that, the plot of Watch Out for Her really circles around the relationship between Holly and Sarah, like we talked about. Is there another kind of female relationship dynamic that you want to explore in your work without giving any spoilers for what's coming next?
Yes, tons. And I am in my next one. I'm working on another thriller, domestic suspense. I can't give too much away, and it's in the very beginning stages, but it is, yes, a relationship between women and men and family, and a relationship more, I would say, women. It is about women who are separately seeking a life different than what they currently have, and the dangers and the risks involved with that.
You did a very good job avoiding giving anything away while also keeping us intrigued. So 10 out of 10.
Thank you.
And this is kind of taking a little bit of a left turn, but you've mentioned a couple of times that you started writing rom-coms and kind of chick lit. How did you shift from that tone into thrillers?
Also a great question. So my chick lit was edgy. It was definitely edgy. The shift felt very natural to me. I've always been drawn to really dark material. When I was younger, I would read everything and anything I could get my hands on that was dark. And twisted. I loved it. I think I myself am a very happy, positive person. I have a really kind of positive outlook on life. And I'm so intrigued by the dark side. I'm so intrigued by it. So I'd always read it. And I'd always written it as a teenager. I wrote some dark stuff as teenagers tend to do. It felt like a very natural progression as I went into dark women's fiction. And actually, Woman on the Edge was a dark women's fiction when I signed with my agent. And it was my agent who said, I think this needs to be a thriller. And it was my agent who helped me every step of the way to make sure that we turned that book into the best thriller we could. And when she said it to me, it was like she saw into my soul, because I think I was really scared to write a thriller because the structure of it and the research of it seemed very daunting to me. And every genre, I think, is difficult to write in its own way, and it has its own challenges.
No, but I agree with you. I think thrillers do seem quite intimidating.
Yes. And it is. It was a departure from what I had done before. It is intimidating, but there's such a challenge in that. And it means as a writer, I get to keep growing and I want that so much. I want to keep growing and to keep learning. And so in the end, it was the best thing I think I ever did.
And you mentioned you're a voracious reader. Do you still read thrillers while you're in the process of writing them?
Constantly. I do actually. It's funny. So Jennifer Villiers, who is just one of the most phenomenal authors in the genre, also Canadian, and her next book, Things We Do in the Dark, is coming out. I asked her to send me early copies of her books if I'm struggling, because I think she's so talented. She's remarkably talented. She's an exceptional writer. And I learned from her. And so I have asked her, hey, she doesn't believe me that I learned from her, but I learned from her. So I do definitely read. I don't take anyone's ideas and I don't steal them. It's more just, I just learn the structure maybe, or I'm just learning a way of teasing out a clue. If there's something I'm finding that I'm having a challenge with, I definitely will read other authors' work. And then I also read it for pure pleasure and pure entertainment value because I need a break.
So I take it you're able to kind of switch from writer brain to reader brain to editor critique brain as needed. You never really get caught up.
No, I think I compartmentalize really well. I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing, but no, I can switch off. When I write, I'm so consumed and immersed in this entirely different world. It's like I'm a different person, almost like I become them in some ways. So I'm in their head, not in my own, if that makes sense. Maybe that sounds completely bonkers. But my characters, they completely take over. So it's not, it's not me. It's another Sam.
I would love to hear a little bit more about what you've been reading lately. I feel like you have I feel like you're going to give us good recommendations.
Well, I'm very, very lucky to be asked to blurb a lot of books. That too. What a feeling. What an ego boost that anybody wants my name on their cover. I read Breathless by Amy McCullough, which is coming out in May, I think. I thought that was a fantastic thriller. It takes place on a mountain. It's a very chilling, both in the setting and in the story. I read The Swell by Ali Reynolds, which she wrote Shiver, which also took place on a mountain. And this one takes place in a remote bay where characters are surfers. I'm reading It Could Be Anyone by Jamie Lynn Hendricks right now. And it's delicious. Just a delicious, fun thriller. My Summer Darlings by May Cobb. Whew, steamy. Hot, and just salacious and sizzling. Never Coming Home by Hannah Mary McKinnon. Devious and brilliant. Last One Alive by Amber Cowie. Haunting, very Agatha Christie-esque. I could go on for like the rest of this episode with all the books that I've read.
Love it.
I'm curious, just speaking of books you've read, is there a thriller with a twist that has just completely blown you away? Just to put you right on the spot.
No, it doesn't. What I always worry about is I'm afraid to give spoilers in my books, and I don't want to give spoilers in anyone else's books. So Fair. I'm going to say to keep it safe, and also because this was the book for so many of us that I think made us maybe want to write domestic suspense, or that actually it was the OG domestic suspense of this time, because there are ones that came out before, but Gone Girl.
Yeah,
I love Gone Girl. Oh,
it's so good.
So good. It is genius.
Maybe you've already answered this. Do you have a number one most recommended book of all time?
Same thing. Also, because I don't really have a favorite book. I think I just have a book I'm loving at the moment. So a book that really stayed. Did you say thriller or any book?
Any book.
Woman on Fire by Lisa Barr. It is a New York Times bestseller. Sharon Stone optioned the book. It's both historical fiction and contemporary. It is about art theft during the Holocaust and then in current time and then in present time. It is the amount of research. First, Lisa Barr is one of the most amazing people I know. She is just such a wonderful, generous, kind, wonderful person. The amount of research she had to do to seamlessly structure this novel is astonishing to me. Historical fiction writers in general, like Genevieve Graham, one of the most beloved Canadian historical fiction writers, Natalie Jenner. The amount of work that goes into structuring historical fiction and the research and the accuracy blows my mind. And Woman on Fire is such a phenomenal book. I will never forget it. And it's a New York Times bestseller, so nobody else will either.
Awesome. Thank you. And before we let you go, where can readers find you online?
So readers can find me online at S. Bailey Books on Instagram and Twitter. I don't know why I said Twitter that way, but I am not on Twitter as often as I am on Instagram and Facebook. So on Facebook, it's Samantha Bailey Author. My website is SamanthaMBailey.com. It is currently being redesigned. It should be live very, very soon. And that's basically where you can find me much of the day.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we share those links and link to your books. Thank you so much for doing this. This has been really, really great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Rewriting Life podcast. If you're interested in Samantha's books, we'll include links in our show notes. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're looking for tips on growing your self-publishing business, you can find us at kobowritinglife.com. Be sure to follow us on socials. We're at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and Twitter. This episode was hosted by Rachel Wharton and Joni Placido, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robotham, and our theme music is composed by Tearjerker. If you're ready to start your publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing.